streaming, and I think you'll be okay, yeah.
And then it should give me a go live. Check your theme is all work hard. Yep, there we have it.
Cool.
So now, this is the microphone.
Okay.
That's the thing that everything is going to be connected to.
Okay.
If you want and you see something that you want to ask, just ask questions. You can go through the chat to do that with, or whatever. There's a good chance I won't see it.
Okay.
So I will probably need to be fed questions when they show up.
Okay, cool.
And you don't have to do anything crazy about like, oh, this question just happened. You can wait until I finish or whatever.
Okay.
And there's millions of questions to be asked. You're obviously not going to be able to see the laptop.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So I'm just going to wait for 3 minutes and then start the thing, and then we'll call it a day.
Cool.
Unless you want us to start early and then just sit here and wait and let people enter the chat room before we start.
I mean, if you want to do that, you can, but
I don't know.
I don't think that it would make any difference, really.
I don't think so. Okay. Video bit rate, blah, blah, blah. Frame rate. Perfect. Then just for me,
Uh-huh.
because there's some people who have expressed interest that also do not have a Facebook. So what I'm going to do is ask Gina afterwards, obviously, but potentially put this on my YouTube channel.
I don't think she'd have an issue with
I
that.
don't think she'd care.
Yeah, she doesn't probably.
Unless the BAC has a YouTube, then we can put it on their YouTube.
I don't know if they do or not. I can check.
No clue. It's not a big deal to me. So now all I do is I play move the music stand around until it looks decent.
Oh, I guess they do.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh,
They haven't used it in 4 years, but it exists.
Well, this might be useful for them.
Yeah.
They might like that. So maybe I'll put it here. Yeah. Here is good.
Yeah.
Because now it doesn't look like this. Alright. So now that's gone. I'll edit it slightly to fix it. We're at 158. Choose where to post your live broadcast. Share an event. Oh, it's already there. Oh, look at that. How nice.
And we could do like a little caption if you want.
I'm easy. Whatever
Pretty
you think is good.
Self-explanatory. Maybe just do like live broadcast, lesson, quarantine. Oh, it's already there.
Yeah,
Never
it's all in the
mind.
event,
Never
so it's all there.
mind.
So
It's pretty self-explanatory then.
I guess you could just hang out wherever you want.
Okay, I'll
Sit in the audience.
sit right there. There you go. You have an audience.
Yeah, audience of one. And I will also have my phone out somewhere just so
Okay.
I can see some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I'll check my Facebook and stuff.
Beautiful. I'm just gonna go live anyway. I don't need a title. It's in the thing. Okay. Alrighty. Look at that. I'm here.
There
I'm
you
doing
go.
the things.
There you go.
Sweet.
Quarantine.
Am I in the thing yet?
I'm looking right now.
Alright. Beautiful.
No, but that is okay. We can refresh. Maybe it'll take a little bit.
Not in a rush.
Still not there.
Still not there?
No.
Okay. Why isn't it not there? I don't see why it's not there.
I'll just keep on refreshing. It might just take a little bit.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'll play some music.
There we go.
weird spot?
Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, now let's get this show on the road. Welcome, welcome. I'm Brandon Dodge. I'm the drum guy. I have a bunch of drums. I play drums. Drums are my life. That's what I do. So today I'd like to start us off, with a little bit of a warm up. Whenever we start with anything, I like to think about running, weightlifting, just anything that requires a lot of work. And the reason why is because you don't just run a marathon right off the bat. You don't just lift a bunch of heavy weights instantly. No, we gotta stretch, we gotta warm up, we gotta get up there, we gotta get ready for it. So I'm gonna start with my hands. What I do is I leave them straight to the sides. I'm not holding them or anything, they're just dangling, letting gravity take hold. I'm standing about shoulder width apart. You can have your feet out, you can have your feet in, you can have your feet straight forward. And then I slightly bend at the knees. And the reason for this is because if you lock your knees, you have a chance of passing out. We don't want that. So, I kind of call it the air chair. Stole that from my time in college. One of my professors told that. So, then what I do is I slowly make a fist, and I slowly release the fist. There's no pressure, there's no strain. And if you notice, it's all in a wave function. And the reason for this is we're just moving the muscles in our hands and in our arms. You can actually literally see muscles moving. And what that does is it physically moves blood to your hands. I don't know about you guys, but I very much do not enjoy playing with cold hands. So this is kind of what I start with. Do this for a little while. It's a literal warm-up. Now when we do this, we add a little bit of tension in our hands, a little bit of tension in our fingers. So we got to get rid of that tension. So what I do is I lean over to one side and I rotate at the wrist. I let my fingers do whatever they want. I let my arm kind of do whatever it wants, so long as it's dangling, free form, free fall. But I just turn at the wrist. What this does is it shakes out my fingers and it wakes up my wrists, because I haven't used my wrists much today. So I gotta get that going. Then I'll switch to the other side and I'll do the same thing. It's really nice to do this sort of stuff. Keeps you nice and loose. That's the goal here, to stay relaxed at all times. So after that, I bring my arms up, about shoulder height, and then the motion is just gonna be me extending my arms and retracting my arms, kind of like so. But then I let my wrists do whatever they want. So it looks kind of like this. And the reason for this is it relaxes my wrists. Because just the same as doing this stuff with our fingers, our wrists gained a little bit of tension when we were relaxing our fingers. So now we gotta get some of our wrist relaxation going. A little bit higher. This gives a slightly different muscle group going. A little lower, same deal, different muscle group. Then I drop my arms back to my sides, and then what I do is I lift at the shoulders. Lift, 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 and I keep it here for a couple seconds, and then I drop them. And a lot of people, they like to hold their breath when they do this, or breathe in. You don't have to, but it works, kind of like so. And then I roll them back. Then you want to roll them the other way. This is engaging our shoulders, which is super important because a lot of our stuff comes from our shoulders. Then I drop my head so that there's a slight bit of pressure back here on the back of my neck. And I slowly rotate it to the side. So now that tension's over here. Now you don't want to go so much to where it hurts or anything. Just go till you can feel it. And go to the other side. Back to the other side. Now, I focus a lot on the neck and the shoulders because that's where most of our tension lies. As humans, that's where we tend to keep it all. Go all the way around. So if we keep it nice and relaxed, then we don't have to worry about hurting ourselves. We don't have to worry about having tense playing or anything. Then I sit here for a little bit and I check everything. I don't move, I don't do anything, and I slowly lift my head back up. And again, I wait for a couple seconds, I check everything. Does everything feel relaxed? Do I feel relaxed? Am I calm? Am I focused? Am I in the zone? That sort of thing. And then I'll break out. That little bit of rest is super important. When we don't rest, when we take some time away, then what happens is all of that stuff we just did to relax kind of goes away. We kind of lose all that stuff. So that's my little warm-up thing. I don't do a whole lot with my legs outside of keeping them relaxed, because most of the time when we're playing most of these drums, we're just standing anyway. Now when we get to the drum set, that's a slightly different story, but we'll get there when we get there. So now that we've got our body kind of warmed up, let's start playing some notes. So I'm going to start with a good old snare drum. This is what most of us have access to as of right now. Usually it's a practice pad, maybe it's like a table, maybe it's a phone book. Like, there's a lot of options out there. You can use pillows, just anything that doesn't destroy anything, and hopefully not too loud and obnoxious like what this is going to be. But this is kind of what we have the most access to. And then a pair of sticks. A lot of people tend to keep sticks around. If not, we can work on some other stuff. We'll work on some hand stuff later maybe. But for now, using some sticks, holding the sticks, and we're just going to do good old 8 on a hand. What that means is 8 strokes on one hand before we move to the other hand and do 8 strokes. Now what we're going to use is what's called full strokes. Now full strokes, what they are, is you start with the stick way up high like this. Now you don't want it high up where your wrist is high up. You just want it high up where it's like a check mark. Then we'll hit the drum, and it comes right back up. That's known as a full stroke. So we're going to use full strokes for right now just to get the ball rolling. So let's do some 8 on a hand. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and go. Ready to go. This is kind of like ramping up, getting ready to actually do a bunch of music stuff, to get into the hard practicing that we tend to do. Now, one thing of note, the bottom half of us, our legs, they got to stay relaxed, just like that air chair that we had right up front. We got to keep it, or else all that tension, it starts in the feet, goes up through the knees, up to the legs, heads right up to our shoulders and everything, which will then go to our arms, to our hands, to our wrists, to our fingers. And when that all happens, we tighten up, we get all tense, and it kind of looks like this. Not a whole lot to do there. I kind of think of it like swimming pools. There's swimming pools that are full of water. They're really easy to walk in. Yeah, there's a little bit of resistance. But then think of a swimming pool that's full of like molasses. Way much more resistance, way harder to move in, just not fun at all. When we tighten up, it becomes harder and harder for us to play because we start fighting with our own bodies. And we don't want to do that. We want to keep everything nice and relaxed and ready to go. Cool. So let's do a little bit more of 8 on a hand. The goal here is to pay attention to the sound. If it sounds the same throughout every time we play a note, that's excellent. When we switch hands and it sounds the same, that's also excellent. The goal here is if you were to close your eyes, you couldn't tell which hand the player is using. That's the goal here. So here we go. 8 on a hand. 1 and 2 and ready and go. And attention, you could hear that my left hand started a little bit softer most of those times through. That's something to pay attention to. Obviously, try to keep the tempo going, keep the timing good. Good friend of ours is known as the metronome. I don't have one out here today just because of how all the setup ended up working, but we can deal with that a little bit later. So that's a nice basic thing to just get your hands started. So the next thing I try to do is I try to think about my brain. How do I get my brain engaged in more than just listening and watching my hands and making sure they all look good? Well, I start using things called rudiments. And rudiments are kind of like words we use. We can build sentences, we can build phrases, we can build whole stories using just words. That's kind of what these rudiments are. We craft them together to make ideas on the drums. We can craft them together and use them on all the different instruments. And we can also put them together to make things that sound really fun and really cool, but make it also feel easy. If we just go off of stroke types, those are like individual letters. And instead of it being like, full stroke, and then another full stroke, and then like a downstroke, and then an upstroke, well, that's like saying w, d. If we can put it all together, all of a sudden it sounds like word. We don't think about the individual letters as much, we just think of the full word. So what I just played there is known as a paradiddle. All it is it starts with your right hand, then it goes to your left hand, then it goes to your right hand, and then it does your right hand again. Drummers, we're not the smartest of creatures. We kind of use easy vocabulary to make our things work out. So for instance, the para. In a paradiddle, there's two parts to it. There's the para and there's the diddle. With the para, it's two notes with two hands. So it sounds kind of like this. Para. Now with the diddle, it's two notes with one hand. Diddle. Now, the thing about all of that is you can't start your paradiddle on the same hand you end it with. Because once you do that, you've played 3 notes in a row on your right hand. Now that's a triple. See, we're not super creative. We have single, double, triple. Not the craziest thing in the world. So what you have to do is you have to alternate. You got to start the paradiddle with your other hand. So it'll look kind of like this. That's kind of what a paradiddle looks like, nice and slowly. Now, right now I'm using nothing but full strokes. That's because we're at a nice slow tempo. So let's just do a little bit of this, nice and slow. Here we go. Ready, and. Beautiful. So, when we get a little bit faster though, we can't get these full strokes going all the time. So we have to start using different strokes. So there are 4 main stroke types in these strokes. There's the full stroke, which we already know. Then we have what's called the downstroke. Now the downstroke starts high, hits the drum, and it stays low because your wrist is going down into the drum. That's kind of what's going on here. Now, the upstroke is the exact opposite. It actually starts down here, hits the drum, and comes straight up. Now notice by itself it's a little bit quieter than a downstroke or a full stroke. And that's because you have such little distance between the stick and the drum. So what we gotta do is we gotta just let it be how it is unless it's followed by another stroke. So for instance, a downstroke followed by an upstroke, the upstroke now has enough momentum, enough rebound to get more volume out. Now that's going to be key when we do things like double strokes, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So with these paradiddles, instead of having that diddle be 2 full strokes, we're going to actually turn them into a downstroke and an upstroke. So it'll look like this. When you go a little bit faster, to make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to take this up a little bit. All of a sudden, that downstroke followed by an upstroke starts turning into what looks like two notes with one wrist motion. Let me see if I can show it to you guys. Looks kind of like that. Pretty useful, pretty versatile in our drumming. It makes things sound a lot faster than they are if we think about it that way, because if my wrists are just going here, but then I turn all of that into double strokes, all of a sudden you can play a lot faster. So I'll do 4 normal single strokes, and I'll go into 4 double strokes, and I'll just do that for a little bit. Here we go. So with all of these rudiments, all these paradiddles, all these single strokes, all these different stroke types, there's one stroke we haven't talked about yet. So, we've talked about the full stroke. Hopefully you all remember what that is. Just starts up, hits the drum, and ends up. The reason why we call it a full stroke is because it uses the full range of your wrist, the full motion of it. Then we have the downstroke. Starts up, hits the drum, and stays down. The reason why is because your wrist is going down into the drum. Then you have the upstroke, starts down, hits the drum, ends up. And it's because the wrist is going up. Pretty self-explanatory. Last one is the tap. We started high, we've ended high, we've started high and ended low, started low, ended high. Now we just start low and end low. And it looks kind of like this. Nice and soft, stays nice and down. Pretty useful. It's exceptionally good for quiet stuff. So that's a little bit about the snare drum. Now what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to play a little bit on the snare drum. During this time, if you have any questions about this general technique stuff, the general rudiment stuff, stroke types, all that stuff, feel free to give a shout. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy a little bit of boisterous snare drumming. So that was a improvisation using a bunch of different rudiments. I was using some flams, I was using some drags, I was using some paradiddles, just a bunch of different rudiments thrown together to make a mishmash of stuff. That's one thing that's nice when you have mastery over your rudiments, when you have mastery over your dynamics, when you have mastery over your stroke types, is you can start making music by choosing how to piece them together. Think of it like puzzle pieces, except it's in real time. So I can just make up whatever I want and it sounds great. Now, it's very important to learn snare drum etudes, snare drum pieces, because then you get to go through exercises that you might not challenge yourself with, you might not explore because you don't know what's out there, or you might not piece things together that specific way. So, one thing that I like to play, it's very old, I forget the name of it as of right now, but it's a nice short, well, it's longer, but I'm only going to play a short part of it. And it's a great one to start working on rudimental drumming, which is based on these words that turn into phrases that turn into songs. So here we go. Not the whole thing. Most famous rudimental snare drumming thing we've got that we hear all the time is the good old 21st century movie beginning. Basically what it sounds like. Very fun. I enjoy that one a lot. So, we spent a whole lot of time on the snare drum. The whole reason why I like spending so much time on this snare drum is because what it has to offer is it's one surface to play all our stuff on, to get warmed up on, to get our brain functioning, to get our blood flowing, to get everything moving. But when we go to other instruments like this drum set, or like the vibraphone, or many other instruments out there, you have to deal with multiple surfaces. Because of that, you might not be consistent between the two different surfaces, or the 3, or the 4, or the 7, or the 15, or the 45 different surfaces you have. So just limiting yourself to one surface like the snare drum, what ends up happening is you get to sound really consistent, really clean here, so when you move to other places, it's going to sound all right. So with that, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the drum set. So we've got the good old drum set over here. It also has a snare drum to it. It sounds a little bit different from a concert snare drum, though. That's kind of what it sounds like. Different drummers have many different choices for their snare drums. This is one that I tend to enjoy. You've got plenty of cymbals over here. We've got a crash cymbal right here. We've got a crash cymbal over here. We've got what's called a ride cymbal over here. It's a very big cymbal. We've got some hi-hats way over here. Those are known as cymbals. They live in the cymbal family. They're these metal discs that hang on top of these stands. They're meant to resonate. They're meant to last a decent amount of time. You get the idea. They are kind of like the shiny highs of the drum set. Then for drums, we've got good old snare drum, which we've already talked about. Then we have a couple of toms here. Toms are basically snare drums, but they don't have that ringy nature to them. And the reason why, I don't know if you can see it, but underneath here are these metal wires. What those do is they press up against the bottom head of the drum and make that kind of a sound. When they aren't pressed up, You get kind of that sound. Now with the toms, they don't have these wires. They don't have these snares. That's why it's called a snare drum. So we just call them toms. Someone decided to name them that way. That's how they are today. So this one is known as the tom-tom, also known as the rack tom, also known as the high tom. Now, the reason why it has all these different names is because in some drum sets, it sits on top of the bass drum. It sometimes has its own rack. It's like a giant metal frame that sits over here, and you can fit 4 or 5 or 6 of these drums on it at once. So sometimes it's called a rack tom, sometimes it's called a tom-tom. For me, I like to call it a tom-tom just because it's easy. I don't have to remember 2 words, I only have to remember 1. It sounds kind of like this. It's a little higher pitched. That's alright. This is kind of where we get to our mids in our drum set section. We've also got the floor tom, which is way over here. That's what it looks like. This good old floor tom, the reason why it's called that is because it sits on the floor. It has its own legs and everything. You don't need to mount it on anything fancy. And it's a little bit lower. It's also known as the low tom. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 or 7 toms, so they all have like a bunch of names. So for me, I call it the floor tom because it's the only tom I have that's on the floor. And it sounds kind of like this. There you have it. Then we've got the bass drum, the most important thing to any dance, to any party. We get that big low kick. Now with this, we don't use our sticks, we don't use our hands to hit it. Instead, we use our foot. There's this foot pedal down here, and that's kind of what we use it for. Same thing with the hi-hat. You can use sticks with it, but there's also this pedal down here that my left foot is hanging out on. When I don't have my foot on it, that's kind of what it does. But I can also use my foot to make notes. Really useful when you're trying to do 3 or 4 or 5 different things on the drum set. So that's most of the anatomy of the drum set. There's one part that's very important that I'd like to share with you guys, and that is the cowbell. I don't know how many times people ask me for more cowbell, but every time they ask me, I make sure I come prepared. I have probably 6 or 8 different cowbells to my name, all of which are slightly different, all of which sound different, all of which are different sizes, and they're very much fun to play. So this is kind of what this one sounds like. Pretty loud, pretty fun. I very much enjoy playing drum set with it. So, for those of us at home who don't really have access to a drum set, one thing I tend to do, this is when I'm traveling, this is when I don't have access to my stuff, this is when I have to be quiet, all those sorts of things. What I do is I take a chair, kind of like this one, set it down, sit on it, and now I use my feet and I use my hands. That's all I need. So, when I'm playing some drum set stuff, this will be my bass drum, this will be my hi-hat. This hand is usually my right hand, which a lot of times will cross over, as you'll see in drum set land. This hand will not be crossing over, but it's usually the snare drum hand. And that's what I kind of do. Sometimes I'll move over to my knee, use that as like my crash cymbal, that sort of thing. It's a great way to practice a lot of coordination and a lot of independence, which you'll see on the drum set very shortly. It's a great way to practice all that stuff without having access to the actual instrument. Now, there is no substitute the actual instrument, but this will help a little bit. So, going back to the drum set, we've got ourselves multiple things going on at once. So I'm going to play a nice, easy drum beat for you, and then we'll break it down, talk about it. If you guys have any questions while we're going, or maybe you are a drummer and you want to talk about something a little bit more advanced, we can totally get into all that stuff. I don't want to just keep everybody here looking at the basics if everyone already knows the basics, but who knows. So, nice basic drum beat. This is known as the basic rock groove. Now it doesn't sound super rocky right now. I have a fancy little tool that'll help me. It's just a piece of plastic, but it'll change the drum set completely. Listen to the snare drum. Here we go. And there you have it. A fatter snare drum sound that everybody likes to hear with rock. So, basic rock groove. What's it made up of? It's made up of 3 parts. You got this hi-hat and it's just going. It's the same all the way through, never stops, never slows down. It just keeps on keeping on. Then you got this bass drum. We like to put it on the first note of the hi-hat out of every 4 notes. So it'll be like this. If you're keeping track of time, a great way to go is to think of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And while that's going on, you'll notice that the bass drum lands on 1 and 3. Now the snare drum. This is one of the most important things in Western music that I can think of, especially when it comes to like rock, pop, hip hop, all that stuff. Beat 2 and beat 4 on the snare drum. It's what people clap to when they go to concerts. It's just the thing. And I'll show you with some more advanced drum beats how important it is to still keep it going, even though it doesn't really exist. But it does. But it doesn't. But it does. And then a lot of the times, the lack thereof makes you feel really unbalanced. So all this is the snare drum gets to be on 2 and 4. 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and. Put it all together. Now, a lot of drummers, when you listen to recordings, they don't just stick to like the basic rock groove when they play rock. Instead, what they do is they start moving the bass drum around. And a lot of times that's to mimic the bass guitar player. Sometimes the bass guitar player will play some cool, groovy stuff, and the bass drum will try to mimic it. Really fun stuff, but that requires a lot of independence with the bass drum. A lot of times, us humans, we think about the top half of our body as like the half that does all the things, and the bottom half is the thing that walks, that gets us to places. In this world of drumming, all that goes away. Your feet become just as important as your hands, and they aren't always doing the same things. It's like a pat your head, rub your tummy, except you're doing that with 4 different limbs. Now, right now I'm only using 3 because my left foot is just staying and holding the fork. But that's when we get to stuff like disco. Disco, we start using the left foot, and it'll look a little bit like this. We have to lift our foot to make that sound happen. When you get to jazz, it's used all the time. That sort of thing. When you get to Latin music, it's part of the whole thing. Let me change this in a sec. Here we go. That sort of stuff. And sometimes people like to use it just as an exclamation mark to make sure that you know where each quarter note is. trick the brain into thinking of something that's going on that's actually not going on. So I'll play a little bit for you and see if you guys can catch it. Here we go. All of a sudden, I'm not playing in 4. If you try to count it out, it doesn't work out so well. But it feels right because the hi-hat is going at a consistent thing. It just doesn't work out that way. So, how to play in weird time signatures like that? This was in 7, by the way, if you want to be counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's what it's in. I'll show you. Here we go. That kind of deal. Really fun, really useful. Part of what makes this work out so well is thinking about where our hands line up, where they come together, and where they don't. If you know what comes after each note, a lot of things become a little bit easier. When you know what comes before each note, it becomes a little bit easier. Now, we're going to go back to a little bit of our snare drum stuff that we worked on. We worked on the good old paradiddle. Well, in drum set land, the paradiddle is really cool. Make things sound cool and flowy and fun. It's also a great way to speed yourself up while keeping time with what's going on. So, for instance, let's say I was playing a little bit faster. So, most all of that was just paradiddles. And that's the reason why starting there is so important. If you don't have solid paradiddles right here, when you move to 2 drums, it's only going to be harder. That's how it's always going to be. So a great way for me to practice that early on, even before I have a whole lot of paradiddle experience, is I start with, like, say, the basic rock groove. I start there. And then what I do is I start moving around where my hands are going. It's going to be a little bit weird on the ear. Some of it's not going to sound super great. But what it's going to do is it's going to get me used to playing consistently through different surfaces. So here we go. Stuff. As we get further along with all this, there are tons of things that start opening up when you start using things like paradiddles into your world. Plenty of rudiments, plenty of things, plenty of stuff to try out. The main thing here is to explore. As a drummer, we kind of become scientists. We have to experiment with what works, we have to experiment with what doesn't work. We got to just try a bunch of different things. So, with that in mind, I'm going to play a little bit for you guys on the good old drum set. Just some stuff. If you have some questions about what I'm playing or how I'm playing, feel free to ask. I'm just going to try to go through a few different styles, a few different types of grooves that I normally play, and talk a little bit musically while I'm doing it. So, without further ado. know, went a little bit into rock and funk and stuff, then I moved over to some jazz, some swing, and then I ended with some kind of more funky stuff that went into Latin there at the end. Really fun to play this instrument, but that's why I start with the snare drum by itself. Now again, if you don't have access to one of these instruments, obviously there's plenty of things that would be ideal, but we have to make do with what we got. So what I tend to do, legs, hands, it really helps. And if you can make it sound really good from there, you can make it sound good anywhere. Ta-da! Now, we've got one more instrument over here. We don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it, so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit briefly. We have over there a vibraphone. Now this is known as a mallet instrument, it's also known as a keyboard instrument. Part of the reason why it's called all these things is because it is oriented like a keyboard, so they call it a keyboard instrument, just like a piano. It's also known as a mallet instrument because instead of using sticks like what we've been using, pieces of wood that are shaped interesting ways, we start using mallets, things with yarn on them. We don't want to be denting and hurting all these metal bars that are on this thing, and some of these have wood bars instead. We don't want to hurt them, so we have to use something a little bit softer. We also don't want a lot of the clang that comes from a stick. Instead, we want a little bit more soft sounds, kind of like this. That kind of sound. Makes it a lot more calming, relaxing, all that good stuff. Now, I know most nobody has one of these at their house. One thing that's ideal, and maybe if this takes off and everybody enjoys it, I'll do a video on it, maybe another stream about it, how to construct something like this, even though it's not actually the instrument. It'll be pretty easy, it'll just take a few minutes, not too bad. It's good old cardboard and duct tape. That's really all you need. So, if in the event you do have this instrument, think of this as like a snare drum, except there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, 35, 36, 37 different drums to hit. That's kind of how I think of it a little bit. So all that technique that we talked about, good old full strokes, they live here. Downstrokes, they exist. Upstrokes, they're totally here. Taps, they're all over the place. Now, when you work on this instrument, or when you work on something or other that you can make that makes it all work, you can think about spatial awareness. There's a little bit of spatial awareness here. You gotta make sure that you hit near the center of the drum for a lot of things. Sometimes you'll head over to the edge, maybe you'll hit the rim, but not a whole lot going on. When you get to the drum set, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different things to hit. So you gotta make sure that you're hitting them in the right areas. With here, an inch can make the difference between this and this. So you have to be really aware of where you're hitting and how you're hitting the instrument, or else you'll accidentally hit a bunch of wrong notes all over the place. Now, one thing that is like the piano, the vibraphone has this pedal thing, and that's what helps it resonate. Without the pedal, short notes. With the pedal, long notes. That sort of thing. Lots of fun to be had there. So, one thing to be practicing with this thing is scales, or just paying attention to how you hit the instrument. we're not going to talk too much about that right now. Instead, what's going to happen is I'm just going to play a little bit for you, let you guys hear a nice, wonderful tune. This is one of my favorites. It's by a guy named Arthur Lipner. It's known as Crystal Mallet. So here we go. There you have it. It's a wonderful, beautiful piece. I very much enjoy it. One thing you'll notice is I was using 4 mallets in my hand instead of 2. And that's something that we do on this instrument a lot, is sometimes we'll play with 2 mallets. That sort of thing. And then sometimes we'll play with 4 mallets. And this is just so we can play like 4 notes at once. Do a bunch of things like that. You get a little bit more flexibility out of it. It's just like a piano player. You play piano with 2 fingers, you can only do so much. We can play piano with 4 fingers. And very rarely we can play piano with 6 fingers. We've got 6 mallet stuff for this guy, but not too much. So that's the general gist of this instrument, general gist of all that stuff. In the future, we'll be looking at creating one of these for you guys to use at home if you guys are interested in that sort of thing. So, at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit, we're basically at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about like general practicing, general maintenance, general things to do in this time. So for me, what I tend to do a lot of is I sit down and I start being like, is this how I want this? No, I want to set it up higher, I want it shorter, and I just start experimenting a lot. Every physical body is slightly different than each other. So what that means is we have to organize our instruments slightly different. It doesn't work the same for each person. So, I also do a lot of cleaning. I start cleaning the instruments. One thing that's fun fact about the cymbals, some people, they'll try and make it shiny again, all nice and colorful and bright again. But other people, they want to keep all of those little pieces of dirt, all that little piece of grime, because what it does is it gives more character to the cymbal. And by character, yeah, a little bit of that's like, hocus pocus, whatever, but there's actual audio differences. So what happens is that grime, it kind of seeps into the cymbal and it kind of deadens the sound, makes it not ring as long. It gives it a darker character, it gives it a warmer tone, and the sound becomes a little bit more complex. It's like it's your sound instead of store-bought sound. Other people, they don't like that. They like the shimmer, they like the brightness, so what they do is they clean it up. That's pretty common. Both ways are fine. Just make sure to be wary about what you're doing or what other people are doing so you don't accidentally do what they're doing, what they're not doing. There are several horror stories of people who like the grime and they've had it for 5 years that way, and then someone came and was like, oh, I cleaned your cymbal for you. Well, that's 5 years down the drain that they had to work back up. Now, for the drums, kind of how we clean drums is you can use like Windex or wet paper towel, get all that dirt off, get all that dust off, make it look shiny again. There's a couple other more advanced ways to do this, but that's kind of the basics of it. So there's a ton of resources for all of that sort of stuff online. A great guy to look at that does do-it-yourself stuff is a guy named David R. He has a great YouTube channel. He does a bunch of do-it-yourself projects, a bunch of like, you might not know this type of thing, or let's build our own thing. Now for performance stuff, there's a million things out there. A great thing to be doing right now is listening to music. You can listen to old recordings that you've had on the shelf for a while. You can listen to favorites that you've had for years. You can go online and listen on YouTube. There's a bunch of people out there with a YouTube channel, including myself. And then also these live events that keep popping up. Try to join them. Try to be part of them. Because what happens is then us musicians, we still get heard. We can still work on our stuff. We can still do things. So I hope you guys enjoyed all this stuff. We're about to the end. If you have any last second questions, ask them now. If you guys enjoyed this sort of thing, please let us know over here at the Brewery Arts Center. I'd like to give a big shout out to them and thank you for helping them get this thing set up and going for me. I think this was a great idea, and it helps a lot of people, students included, to go and do things that they just can't do. Music education is a very personal thing, and it's really hard to do it without somebody in the room teaching. So this is a great way to go. It's still not the best, but at least it's better than nothing. And music gets to keep going, especially in the local scene. I mean, you don't see the greats from, legends of the 80s or 90s coming over to your hometown to show you a bunch of things most of the time. Instead, you get to see some of your local talent doing stuff. A lot of local musicians are really good. The only reason why they aren't being paid attention to is because they don't have the big name. That's really all it is. Plenty of great musicians in this area. So, yeah, support your local musician if you can, and really just support the arts in general. We need it now more than ever, and we're also helping give you guys something, hopefully, in return that you can't just buy off a shelf. So, anyway, that's about all the time we have for today. I don't see any questions, so I think we will call it there. Awesome. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day, and maybe we'll do this some more. Take care.
You have a good amount of viewers, more than yesterday's.
Oh, nice. I give that a 5. Do you want it deleted or saved?
Save it. Just save it, yeah.
haven't seen it. I'm Amber. I'm looking into it. I'm not seeing it either. Oh, that happened.
Yeah, and then I had to send my mom a link,
And then it all worked?
yeah, then it all worked.
Nice.
So originally I was just going in like the videos rather than the main page.
Oh,
So a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people weren't watching at first, and then.
Cool
posted
beans.
to
Yeah,
them.
19 engages, 314 people reached. How many people were watching at a time?
It varied between like 14 and 20.
Wow,
So
that's pretty good.
it's pretty good.
All right, well, let me stop recording this, and then I'm going to put this on YouTube for the most part.
Yeah.
So that way the people who couldn't watch can watch it.
Yeah, and I bet you we can put a link on Facebook as well.
Yeah,
so.
if you guys have a YouTube link, that works great.
Yeah.
We can just throw it onto your guys' YouTube. Yeah, look at that. Bunch of people. Beautiful. Alrighty. So, I feel that was a decent success.
Yeah, especially because it's like brand new. And
Yeah.
when did you get notified that you were doing this?
Oh, I told Gina.
Oh, you told Gina.
I was like, hey, can I just use the space to do a stream? And she was like, sure. And I was like, I was thinking of doing it on Mondays or whatever. And then she was like, let's do Thursday. I was like,
Cool.
oh, okay. So then we did Thursday. And then if people like it, we'll do it some more. For me, what I'm thinking of doing is doing it for long periods of time.
Mhm.
Because, like, that was an hour.
Right.
That went reasonably quick, actually.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to take, like, I thought I wasn't going to have a lot to talk about, but there was a lot to talk about there. But then what I can do is I can spend several hours doing things that people might enjoy. Some of it's going to be craft stuff, like, for instance, that thing. All you
Mhm.
do is you get a long
Oh,
piece
that'd
of
be
cardboard,
cool,
and then
yeah.
you get some duct tape, and then you can create targets to hit. It's not the actual instrument. It won't sound like the instrument, but at least it's something. And I can, like, make that with the people around. If they have questions, I can answer them and all that good stuff. I just need to find some duct tape is all.
Yeah.
I already have a bunch of cardboard, so
Plenty of duct tape here, so.
perfect.
It's totally doable.
And then for some people, I'll teach them how to wrap their own mallets, because that's a thing you can do, and I can tell them like how and where to get certain things.
Mhm.
Because a lot of hardware stores are still open, so all you do is you go to your local Home Depot, get yourself a 7/8 inch wooden dowel, and then you can go to town on all that stuff. For me personally, I have some other options for myself, and that would be for a certain group of people that might not be super interesting to everybody who doesn't know what percussion is, but they might enjoy it.
It's like a niche crowd sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing I would do is talk about playing to recordings and how what you're doing changes things. I have some recordings on my phone. I should just bring a speaker, probably something that's louder than
Mhm.
my drum set. Though I might bring a different drum set that's quieter to accommodate.
Cool.
How was, well, you were listening live, so
Yeah.
I was gonna ask how the audio was, but
No, I went like this. It was fine. You
Oh,
could
cool.
hear everything perfect.
awesome. Because I know that when I'm talking, I'm a little quieter than when I'm playing, but that's okay.
The one thing that I did get a comment on, my mom texted me, can you zoom in? And I was like, he's on a computer, so
I cannot.
Yeah. can't really do that.
If I had a camera, yes.
I could bring my phone next time. 'Cause
Well,
that's a pretty good camera.
Can it zoom in
Yeah.
while you're doing stuff? Okay, then we could do that. The only issue is that won't be the
Microphone.
thing. That's the
Our
reason
camera.
why I
We get
used
a
it.
camera easily.
Yeah. Well, if we get a camera, then it's just an external something or other that hangs out, and then we still have the audio. Because
Mhm.
the audio was halfway decent, partially because this microphone is really good for what it is. It should not be doing this. And in a slightly more long-term thing, if this becomes a thing that happens like a bunch, then what's going to happen is Kelly's going to come in and he'll actually mic up the instruments so they always sound good, and then I'll have a mic so that way I'll always sound good, and then we'll have like a little mixer board to turn things on and off and do things with, if this becomes a thing that a lot of people want to do.
Mhm.
Also, since this was kind of a introductory thing, I might focus on just the drum set, or just the snare drum, or just whatever, or hand drums, or whatever. So I've got plenty of options there.
Cool.
Cool.
I think this should become a weekly thing, especially if we're all gonna be in quarantine for the next.
Well, if we're all in quarantine for the next 30 days, I was straight up considering let's do this Monday through Friday,
Every
9 to
day.
noon. Yeah, because I've got nothing going on.
Yeah.
Where did I put it?
Something to do now.
But I get it. Some people will that'll be too much for people. So I'm fine with doing it once a week or
I
twice
know.
a week.
Just gotta talk to my mom, and she'll.
Yeah, ask her how she feels about it.
Yeah.
Where did I put my damn thing? Did I put it behind the drum set or something? This is a cool camera. The one issue with it is you're not allowed to hook it up to Livestream stuff. And I found a way to work around that, and it's a $150 application.
$150 for an app?
It's half of the cost of the dang camera. I'll rather not.
Yeah, that's kind of unnecessary how
It is unnecessary.
expensive that is.
So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
If it was like $5, I would do that.
Yeah, that's worth it.
And then I can